She always thought her goat wandered the mountains for no reason, until the morning it returned, carrying a leather pouch tied with a knot no human hand should have been able to make. And by the time Maya opened it, the mountains had already decided her life would never belong to her again. She always thought goats were simple creatures, predictable, mischievous, and loyal only to their stomachs. But the morning her goat, Willow, dropped a strange leather pouch at her feet, Maya felt the first ripple of something she couldn't explain. By the third day, when another pouch arrived, heavier, older, and still warm from the journey, she understood this was no accident. The mountain had chosen her, and secrets that should have stayed buried were clawing their way back into the light. Maya had lived alone in the mountains for nearly 6 quiet years, her small wooden cabin tucked against the slope, like a leaf pressed beneath stone. Every morning she woke before dawn, stepped onto the creaking porch, and breathed in the crisp air that smelled of pine and cold rock. Life was simple, predictable, the kind of rhythm people lose themselves in when they want to forget the world they came from. Her goat, Willow, was the only creature she allowed close, stubborn, loud, and somehow endlessly comforting. But that morning, when Willow trotted toward her with something swinging from her mouth, Maya's routine cracked like thin ice. She crouched, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "What do you have there?" Willow approached proudly, hooves tapping across the wooden steps, tail flicking in an erratic rhythm that meant mischief. Maya reached out and gently took the object from Willow's mouth. A leather pouch, small, weathered, and tied tightly with a cord that looked far too new for something found in the mountains. She frowned, turning it over in her hands. No markings, no scent except old leather and faint smoke. Willow nudged her knee impatiently, bleating as if demanding praise for her discovery. Maya chuckled softly, despite the unease curling in her stomach. All right. Good girl. But where did you find this?" She untied the cord. Inside lay a handful of dried berries, dark as midnight and strangely aromatic, like a mix of spice and earth. Not wild berries, not anything she recognized. She poured them into her palm, studying them. Someone gathered these intentionally. Someone sealed them. Someone lost them, or wanted them found. Maya looked at Willow. The goat blinked innocently, chewing on nothing, as though she weren't the source of a mystery that made Maya's skin prickle. She tossed the berries into the fire pit, just in case, and decided the whole thing must be some lost hiker's pouch. But the unease didn't leave. It hovered over her like a shadow that didn't belong. The next day, Willow vanished before sunrise. Maya searched the property, behind the shed, near the stream, along the ridge. But Willow was nowhere. Panic gnawed at her. The mountains were beautiful, yes, but they were also alive with predators, wolves, coyotes, cougars. A lone goat could disappear in minutes. Mara called until her voice cracked, her breath turning to frost in the air. And then she heard it, a bleat so sharp and urgent that it sliced through the silence. Maya sprinted toward the sound, boots slipping over frost-covered roots. Willow emerged from the trees, panting, trembling, and dragging another leather pouch by the drawstring. Maya froze. Not one pouch, 2 days in a row. Willow dropped the pouch into her hands as if performing a sacred ritual. This one was larger, darker, with a faint symbol etched into the bottom, an X carved by a blade. Inside, nothing but dirt, thick black soil that smelled of metal and decay. Maya's pulse hammered. Where are you getting these?" Willow bleated again, nudging the pouch, then turning and trotting toward the forest line. Stopping, looking back. a clear invitation. Maya swallowed hard. "You want me to follow?" Willow stamped her hoof as if shouting yes. The mountain wind pressed against Maya's back like a hand urging her forward. Against every instinct she had, she stepped into the trees. The forest swallowed sound. Even Willow's hooves, normally so loud, seemed muted. Maya followed her through the undergrowth, ducking beneath low branches, stepping over frost-hardened roots. The deeper they walked, the more wrong the world felt. The air grew heavy, still, like breath held too long. After 15 minutes, Willow stopped abruptly at a clearing Maya had never seen before. She knew these mountains intimately, every trail, every slope, every outcropping. But this place, it wasn't on any map, not even in the oldest ranger records she'd studied. Willow approached a fallen log, sniffing, then pawing at the earth beneath it. Maya knelt beside her, pushing aside leaves. Her fingers brushed something cold and smooth, another pouch. This one was different, larger, reinforced with thick stitching. She pulled it from the ground. It was sealed shut with a metal clasp that had rusted nearly through. Maya pried it open, expecting berries or soil. But inside lay something that shouldn't have been there at all. A perfectly smooth, polished stone, the size of her palm. Deep obsidian black with veins of silver shimmering like trapped lightning. It was warm, almost pulsing. Her breath hitched. A memory stirred. Her grandfather, a man of quiet wisdom and mountain lore, whispering stories about sky stones, objects that fell from the mountains during violent storms. Not meteorites, not minerals. Something older, something the mountain hid, something people were never meant to touch. That was just a story, wasn't it? Willow backed away, bleeding nervously now, as if sensing the wrongness Maya held in her hands. Maya closed the pouch and shoved it into her coat, feeling heat through the fabric. She walked back to the cabin with Willow close beside her, but every step felt heavier. The trees pressed close, watching, listening. When she finally reached home, she leaned against the porch railing, breathing hard. Willow nudged her gently, almost apologetically. Maya stroked the goat's head, whispering, "What did you bring me into?" She didn't sleep that night. The pouch lay on the table between two candles, the stone inside seeming to grow warmer by the hour. She watched it until her eyes burned. Part of her wanted to throw it into the deepest ravine she knew. Another part, a quiet, aching part, felt drawn to it, as though some invisible thread connected her to the unknown. At dawn, Willow began pacing outside. Maya stepped out, and the goat immediately approached her with another pouch in her mouth, smaller this time, lighter. Maya's heart sank. This wasn't random, not lost items, not coincidence. Someone, or something, was delivering them to her through Willow. Maya opened the pouch. Inside lay a single scrap of paper, yellowed and torn, faded ink, a handwriting she recognized instantly, her grandfather's. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the steps. The note was simple, written in shaky script. "If you've found this, it means they've returned." The world shrank around her. The mountain woman who lived alone to escape her past felt the ground tremble under the weight of a past she didn't know she had. Willow pressed her head against Maya's shoulder, grounding her. Maya tightened her grip on the note. "Returned. Who?" she whispered. Her grandfather had died nearly 10 years ago, taking with him stories so wild she'd chalked them up to age and imagination. But now she held proof that he hadn't been imagining anything, and that whatever he warned about had awakened. A sharp thud echoed in the distance. Then another. Maya stood quickly, stuffing the note into her pocket. Willow stiffened beside her. The sound came again, closer this time, heavy, deliberate, not human, not an animal she recognized, something moving through the trees with purpose. Willow nudged her again, but this time it wasn't reassurance. It was urgency. Move. Now. Maya grabbed her coat and the pouches, slinging her old pack onto her shoulders. The thudding grew faster, like footsteps too large to belong to anything in these mountains. She backed into the cabin, bolting the door, heart pounding as Willow paced in frantic circles. Then, silence. An awful, echoing silence, like the mountain inhaling. Maya pressed her ear to the door. No sound, no birds, no wind, nothing. The same silence that had blanketed the morning she found the first pouch. She backed away, motioning Willow to stay behind her. Something scraped across the porch. The unmistakable sound of claws on wood. Long claws. Heavy steps. 1, 2, 3. Then the creaking of wood under immense weight. Maya held her breath. The doorknob twisted slightly. Not enough to open. Just enough to test, explore, claim. The creature, whatever it was, sniffed the air. Maya could hear it, feel it. A low rumble vibrated through the door, shaking dust from the hinges. Willow lowered her head, horns angled defensively, body trembling but ready. Maya reached for the rifle beside the table but didn't lift it. She had hunted before. She knew predators. But this wasn't prey or predator. This was something the mountain had been hiding for generations. Finally, after an agonizing stretch of silence, the footsteps retreated slowly, each one thudding like distant thunder. Maya didn't breathe until she heard the sound fade entirely. Only then did she sag into the nearest chair, heart racing, vision blurring. Willow nudged her hand again, bleeding softly. Maya pulled the goat close, burying her face in its fur. "What is happening?" she whispered, voice cracking. Willow didn't have answers, but she had instinct, and instinct told her this was far from over. When night came again, Maya didn't sleep. The memory of the creature stayed lodged in her mind like a splinter. She replayed the sound of its claws, the weight of its steps, the rumble of its breath. She unrolled her grandfather's note again, studying the faded ink. If they've returned, who? What? Why now? And why involve her? Something deep within her stirred, fear mixing with the faintest flicker of revelation. Had her grandfather known she would one day become part of this? Was this the reason he'd urged her to stay in the mountains, even when she'd wanted to leave? The pouches lay in a row on the table, 4 now, each one connected to something bigger, something ancient. Maya knew she couldn't ignore it. The mountain wasn't giving her a choice. When dawn broke again, she stepped outside with Willow close beside her, her coat zipped tight, her breath forming pale clouds. The world felt different, expectant, and she felt it too, the pull of something calling them deeper into the wild. Willow began walking, not randomly this time, but with clear purpose. Maya followed, because now it was too late to pretend the world she'd built for herself was untouched by secrets, too late to turn back to a life of silence. And as she stepped from the porch into the forest, she felt the mountain hold its breath again. This time not in warning, but in anticipation. Whatever was coming, she knew with chilling certainty. The pouches were only the beginning. By the time she realized the goat wasn't walking its usual route, the last of the light was already draining out of the sky. The narrow path that usually led straight back to the cabin bent sharply into the trees, and her goat, Juniper, stubborn as the roots that held this mountain together, didn't hesitate before taking it. The small leather pouch knocked softly against the animal's chest as it moved, thumping in a rhythm that had become disturbingly familiar. Mara felt that same, now familiar tightening in her chest, that mix of dread and curiosity that had been growing with every night the goat came home carrying another pouch that shouldn't have existed. She pulled her scarf higher over her mouth and followed. The forest swallowed sound as she left the main trail. Snow muffled her footsteps, and the cold transferred through her boots like something deliberate, like the ground wanted her to feel how deep it went. Branches clawed at her sleeves. Juniper pushed ahead, sure-footed, unbothered by the encroaching dark, as if she'd walked this way 100 times. Maybe she had. Mara's thoughts flicked through the pouches already hidden in her cabin. Small leather bags, all the same make, all carrying the same impossible contents. Old mixed coins, strange flat stones streaked with green and gold, and in the last few, faded scraps of paper with partial numbers, incomplete names, clues to something that refused to be fully seen. The path narrowed and dipped into a shallow ravine where a ribbon of frozen water wound between rocks. Juniper hopped down with the ease of something born to this. Mara followed slower, one hand on the rock to steady herself. Their breath rose in faint white ghosts. Above them, the last light held on in a thin strip of blue-gray sky. The air smelled different here, less of pine and snow, more of damp stone and something metallic, faint but persistent, like old tools left in the rain. Juniper stopped at a rock face choked with tangled brush. The goat lowered her head and began nosing aside dead branches, revealing a gap where rock should have been solid. A dark opening, no taller than Mara's shoulder and twice as wide, waited there like a mouth that had gone unnoticed by everyone but this goat. Mara felt the hair along her arms rise beneath her coat. "You've been going in there," she whispered, the words faint bursts of cloud. Juniper glanced back at her, chewing absently on a twig, as if to say, "Of course. Did you think the pouches grew on trees?" The pouch at her neck swung softly, reminding Mara why they were here. She squeezed past the brush, crouched slightly, and stepped into the opening. The air changed instantly. The cold grew stiller, heavier, pressing around her like hands. It wasn't the deep freeze of untouched stone. It was the preserved chill of a space sealed off, then disturbed again and again. A cave, or something like it. Juniper followed without hesitation, hooves clicking softly on stone. Mara forced herself forward, one hand skimming the wall, the other lifting the small flashlight she'd shoved into her pocket before leaving the cabin. The beam cut through the dark, revealing rough, uneven rock, a low ceiling, and a narrow tunnel leading deeper into the hillside. The smell intensified. Damp earth, old dust, and that metallic undertone, stronger now. She swept the light ahead and froze. Tracks. Hoofprints like Juniper's, pressed into the thin layer of dirt, going in and out of the tunnel, over and over. But they weren't alone. Larger bootprints, deep, spaced farther apart, marked the passage too. Someone else had been moving through here. Someone heavier. Someone human. When she'd imagined the source of the pouches, she'd pictured something abandoned. Old equipment, forgotten belongings, maybe the remnants of a lost campsite. She hadn't expected fresh evidence of another person. Juniper bumped against her legs, impatient. The goat seemed unconcerned by any of this. That calmed Mara more than anything else could have. Animals didn't ignore danger. They recognized it long before people did. So if Juniper still walked this path, There was a reason. Okay, Mara breathed softly. Show me. They moved deeper into the hill. The tunnel twisted once, then widened slightly, opening into a cramped hollow barely high enough for Mara to stand straight. Her flashlight beam swept the space and stopped. There, against the far wall, sat a metal trunk the size of a small table. A chain lay beside it, a length long enough to drag something from the trunk to the entrance and back again. The goat's pouches matched the material perfectly. Juniper trotted over, nudged the trunk lid, then turned expectantly as if announcing, "Here, this is where I've been shopping." Mara's heart thudded unevenly. The trunk wasn't old enough to be antique, but it wasn't new either. Dents marked its surface, one corner crumpled as if dropped from a height. A heavy padlock hung from the latch, but it was unlocked, the shank resting open. Whoever used this trunk assumed the cave was all the security they needed. Her pulse climbed as she flipped the lock aside and lifted the lid. More pouches, dozens of them, neatly stacked, their leather worn but intact. Some larger, some smaller, all tied with the same careful knots. Beside them lay a battered ledger book, its cover stained and spine cracked, and under both, half buried in dust, the dull gleam of something metallic caught her eye. She reached in and lifted a flat stone from the corner, only it wasn't stone. Not really. Her thumb brushed across its surface. Heavy, dense, shot through with dark veins and glittering specks that caught the flashlight beam. Ore, high-grade ore, if the few geology books she'd read over the years were telling her the truth. The kind they'd once blasted from these mountains until the company shut the mine and claimed the veins were empty. She set it down slowly, the implications spreading through her like cold water. Someone was pulling ore out of a place that was supposed to be played out. Someone without a company logo. Someone who didn't want to be seen. And Juniper had been ferrying small pieces of that operation back to her every night, like offerings, as if the mountain itself had chosen her as witness. She opened one of the larger pouches from the trunk. Coins rattled against each other. Foreign, mismatched pieces from different decades. Different countries. Not wages exactly, but payment gathered over time. Under them, folded carefully, lay a scrap of paper. She smoothed it out with numb fingers. A name, a series of numbers that could be coordinates, or bank accounts, or something else entirely. And at the bottom, in a hurried, cramped hand, "If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out. Please come. Bring help. Follow the tether." She read the words 3 times, the weight of them growing each time. Didn't make it out. Ashes of possibilities flickered through her mind. A trapped miner, a smuggler, an old man too stubborn to accept the mine's closure, or someone who had discovered something the company didn't want public. Juniper nudged her, knocking the pouch from her hand. The goat then stepped around the trunk to the side wall, where a thick frayed rope disappeared into a narrow crevice at ground level. Not a rope, she realized with a start. A tether, like the note said. It looked almost like a lead line for livestock, thick and weather-worn, tied tightly to a metal anchor in the rock. The other end disappeared into darkness beyond the narrow vertical slit, just wide enough for air and maybe a sound to slip through. "You have got to be kidding me," Mara whispered. The goat had been coming here, collecting pouches and leaving with them, but not on her own. Someone had attached the pouch to her, sent her out, trusted her to return. Someone on the other side of that rock, connected to this tether, had been depending on a goat to be their only contact with the outside world. And lately, Juniper had come home carrying the pouches loose, untied. No new knots, no new instructions. The last ones had contained less ore, more scraps of paper, frantic, increasingly disjointed. The last page in the ledger at her cabin had simply read, "Please, soon." She crouched, pressing her ear to the narrow crevice. At first she heard nothing but the hush of her own breath. Then, faintly, something else, a cough, rough, scraped across the stone like it had to drag itself out, followed by a weak, "Juniper?" Mara's heart lurched painfully. She swallowed, throat suddenly dry. "Not exactly," she called softly, angling her voice toward the crack. Silence stretched, thick and brittle. Then the voice came again, raw with disbelief. "Who are you?" She hesitated only a moment. "My name is Mara. I live down the ridge. Your goat's been visiting me." A strained laugh floated through the rock, turning into a cough that didn't quite get enough air. "Of course she has. Nosy little thief." The voice was older than hers, worn around the edges, threaded with fatigue. "A man." "The pouches," Mara said quietly. "You've been sending them. Why?" A pause. She could hear the sound of someone shifting against stone. "Because no one else was going to help," he said finally. "Because the company left me here. Because if I walked out with what I found, I wasn't making it down the mountain alive." The world narrowed to the cold stone under her fingertips. Juniper huffed softly, as if confirming every word. "You're injured," Mara said. "Trapped?" "Both," he replied. No self-pity, just a simple statement of fact. Tunnel collapsed, broke my leg, lost my radio, kept the line for Juniper. She always comes back to food. Guilt punched her in the chest. How many nights had the goat returned later than usual, breathing harder, fur dusted with rock powder? How many times had Mara taken the pouch, muttered thanks, and sent Juniper back out into the dark without realizing she was accepting someone's desperate message? "I thought someone was using you," she whispered to the goat. "I didn't realize it was like this." "Did you open them?" the man asked. "The pouches?" "Yes." "And you're still here," he said. "That's a good sign." She frowned. "Meaning?" "Meaning you're not one of them. Company boys would have been at my throat already." The bitterness in his voice was sharp, but beneath it lay a tired kind of humor. "What's your name?" she asked. "Elias," he said. "Used to be a miner, recently promoted to idiot who stayed too long in the wrong tunnel." Something inside her shifted when she heard that name. Her grandmother had mentioned an Elias sometimes when she told stories of the old mine, muttered about a stubborn younger brother who refused to leave the mountain even after the sirens went quiet and the company trucks rolled out. Mara's heart skipped. Elias Elling? Silence. A long one. "Haven't heard that full name in a long time," he muttered. "Who's asking?" "Mara Elling," she said, voice unsteady now. "My grandmother was Irina. You were—" She stopped herself, the sentence suddenly too large to finish. He finished it for her. "Her fool of a brother." For the first time, his voice softened. "Your little Mara? The one she kept a picture of, swinging a plastic shovel on a beach like the world was made of sand?" Mara blinked hard, the cave swimming in front of her. She remembered that photograph, remembered the way her grandmother's fingers lingered on it when she thought no one was watching. "She said you were gone," Mara managed. "Everyone said you died in a collapse years ago." "Not dead," he rasped. "Just buried in paperwork and lies. When the company shut this place, they didn't close it because it was empty. They closed it because it was too full of the wrong kind of stuff. The ore," Mara said, glancing at the trunk. This isn't wrong. It's valuable. Not that, Elias answered. Deeper, different veins, stuff that makes Geiger counters scream. The floor seemed to tilt under her. Radiation? Call it what you like. All I know is they found it, tried to hide it, tucked barrels away in old tunnels and signed off as environmentally safe while their trucks rolled out full. His breath hitched. They didn't expect an old mule like me to keep poking around after the lights went off. The pouches shuffled into place in her memory. Ore samples, strange, heavier stones, old coins from who knew where, and the increasingly frantic notes. He'd been building a trail of proof, quietly, alone, and the goat had been his courier. Mara leaned her forehead against the cold rock. Why didn't you leave? Tried, he said simply. Found too much. They met me at the road. Smiles, lunches, consulting contracts, real friendly, until I said no, until I told them I kept records that I'd call regulators. Next thing I knew, my truck's brakes were bad. My radio stopped working. I figured if they were willing to risk the whole valley to keep their old sins buried, they wouldn't hesitate to bury just one man properly. His voice dropped. So, I stayed where they wouldn't expect me, in the tunnels. Juniper kept me fed. I sent proof up the mountain in little pieces, hoped someone decent would listen before my luck ran out. Mara exhaled slowly. The mountain felt suddenly heavier over their heads. This wasn't just about money. This was about sickness that could seep silently into water, into soil, into the lungs of kids in the valley. Her valley. Your luck didn't run out, she said. Not yet. My leg would argue, Elias coughed. But I'm breathing, for now. The four now wrapped around her like wire. She straightened. I'm going to get you out. Mara, save your breath, she cut in. I'm not leaving you here. And I'm definitely not leaving those barrels wherever they hid them. Juniper bumped her shoulder as if in agreement, then turned and began pulling on the tether gently, like she'd done 100 times before. Testing the line, measuring its give. Mara checked the knot, the anchor point, the width of the crevice. No way to widen it here. The rock was too thick. Is there another access? She asked. Somewhere above you? He hesitated. Old service shaft, he admitted reluctantly. Not on any current map. Comes out higher up, near that dead pine that looks like it's punching the sky. She knew the one. Everyone on this ridge did. Tunnel caved in about halfway, though, he added. And if you fall, it's a long way down. So I won't fall, she said. The words came out steadier than she felt. I'm calling emergency services first. They need to see the barrels anyway. You think they'll climb this far? He asked quietly. In this weather? For an old ghost everyone already buried on paper? They will when they see what your goat dragged home, Mara said. And if they don't, I'll drag someone up here myself. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt like the mountain itself was listening. Elias let out a low, rough chuckle. You sound like your grandmother. Take that as a compliment or an insult? The highest kind of compliment, he said. She never walked away from a fight that mattered either. Mara swallowed the sudden burn in her throat. She pressed her palm flat against the stone. Stay awake, she said. Keep talking to Juniper. I'll be back. With people who can get you out, and with enough light to make them see exactly what's been rotting under their signatures. Juniper nosed the tether once more, almost like a promise. Then she trotted back toward the tunnel entrance, pausing to look over her shoulder as if checking that Mara would follow. She did. As they emerged into the ravine, darkness had fully claimed the sky. Stars glittered coldly above, indifferent and sharp. But down in the valley, faint orange pinpricks marked human lives, cabins, houses, a school where kids used the creek water without question. They had no idea what might be buried upstream. The leather pouch at Juniper's chest bumped softly as the goat walked. Inside it, coins chimed against ore and paper, a small, stubborn record of truth carried by an animal who only understood the language of feed and trust. That was the part that gutted Mara the most. Elias had done everything right, in the only way he could. And still, nobody had heard him. Nobody, until a lonely woman on the ridge started wondering why a goat kept bringing her secrets in the dark. At the edge of the ravine, she stopped and pulled out her phone. Reception was spotty up here, fickle as the weather, but a faint bar flickered to life. She dialed the emergency number with shaking fingers. When the dispatcher answered, Mara spoke slowly, carefully, choosing each word like it might crack open a dam. "My name is Mara Elling," she said. "I'm on the north ridge above the old mine. I need to report a trapped miner and a sealed tunnel full of illegal radioactive waste." The silence on the line lasted a beat too long. Then the dispatcher cleared their throat. "Ma'am, are you sure?" "I'm looking at the evidence in my hands," Mara replied, "and I can hear him coughing through solid rock." She tightened her grip on the phone. "Send rescue. Send environmental inspectors. Send whoever you'd send if your own family drank from our creek." Something in her tone must have reached through the distance, because the dispatcher's voice changed, became more alert. "We're dispatching mountain rescue and hazmat," they said. "Stay on the line if you can. And thank you for calling this in." She hung up only when the connection sputtered out completely. Juniper leaned against her leg, solid and warm. Mara scratched the goat between the horns. "You did good," she murmured. Tomorrow, the ridge would change. Helicopters beating the air above ancient pines. Bright jackets moving like blood cells through the snow. Cameras, maybe. Questions, definitely. Secrets dragged into light that had never meant to be seen again. Life as she knew it, quiet, contained, isolated, would crack open along with the rock. And yet, as she looked back toward the hidden cave, some stubborn part of her felt relief. The pouches had brought more than ore and coins. They had brought her a choice between complicity and courage, between silence and truth, between living alone on a dying mountain or fighting for one that might outlive all of them. She tightened her coat against the bite of the night air and started down toward her cabin with Juniper at her side, every step carrying her closer to the moment everything would change. Not because of what was buried under the mountain, but because a goat refused to stop bringing it home.